Welcome to the All Ambient Podcast, where we dig into the creative process, we hear untold stories, and we explore the minds of some really brilliant people who are behind some of the finest ambient music out there. My name is Mike Graff. I make music as Dear Gravity. Glad to be here together with you. On this week's music news episode of the All Ambient Podcast, Marshall, Ben, Kirk, and myself explore some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that's happening on the, can't believe I'm saying these names, on the All Ambient Podcast, but they are heavyweight musicians in their own right. But the beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake that has been coming to a head over the past handful of months. Let's set gossip aside. There is an interesting conversation to have about major labels getting involved in pushing, manufacturing, aiding storylines to become a part of the narrative for these artists. And at what point does it begin to overshadow the actual work, the actual art that is being put out by these artists? Just some really interesting angles. I think we were all coming at it from a different angle, and it was great. It was a good discussion. So let's get right into it. Before we get there, make sure you come join All Ambient on Discord if you haven't yet. The link is in the show notes. Great conversations going on there. A lot of different artists, a lot of different musicians, producers, composers connecting, talking about all sorts of things, not the least of which is the podcast conversation on Discord, where we talk about each episode. You can ask additional questions, you can provide feedback, and you can even ask questions for future episodes if you would like. It's a great place to hang and connect with other like-minded folk. Come and join All Ambient on Discord. And also, make sure you go to all-ambient.com. Lots of great releases in the All Ambient family are coming out on streaming and licensing platforms. They're multiplying day by day in the best way. The number of releases that are coming out, any sort of quality in what's being released, quite the opposite. The number of people who are incredible at what they do and who are attached to All Ambient continues to grow. And it is just a great thing. When you head over to All Ambient's website, coming in the near future, you will start seeing some resources that are dropping. We have plans to be rolling them out this year, not in a tease sort of way, but just in a we are actively working on things. We'll be very excited to share them with you when they arrive, and it's going to be great. But that's the place you're going to want to be at. all-ambient.com is the hub for all that. Enough of me blabbing. Let's get right into today's music news edition of the All Ambient Podcast. Well, it's really good to see you guys. How are we all doing?
We're good. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Amazing. We've got some stuff to talk about. Anything from you guys, music news-wise, that you've been hearing or been seeing that you wanted to just kick in a conversation?
There was a Billboard article relatively recently about Spotify playlisting and actually interviews with some of the editorial team there, which I don't think it's necessarily like worth doing a whole segment on or anything like that. But it was interesting, basically, just to see that they are doubling down on the fact that they are not AI people. They are very much listening to very real music. But then when they go through all the editorial team, there is a conspicuous absence of anything to do with ambient music or that side of things. So they interview all these editorial people, and it's like this hip hop person, this, alternative person. And it's like, okay, there's there's a dance electronic person. And it's like, okay, well, it's a lot of playlists which fit within that, which definitely are not being.
They've just got the same categories as the Grammys, right? I mean, we talked to, exactly. That was a joke. That's a callback to our last music news episode. That is interesting that they left that. Maybe they just ran out of, maybe it just wasn't necessary for them to list every single person, but you never know. You never know. That we will come back around to the AI and streaming world for music news. First, though, and just this is a little bit of a nod to some of the stuff that we've been talking about roundtable-ish in the last handful of episodes. The idea of like what winds up happening when you say yes to like major label deals as opposed to just independently controlling your artistry and all that. There's more news kicking around about all this Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef that started going down with the Super Bowl. And with
Yeah.
it just the lawsuits and all this and that, like, do your own research, everyone. Like, the idea isn't that this is where you get your news. The idea isn't that I think that we have the corner on what is right and what is wrong. Do your research, think for yourself, for sure. But it is interesting that it is starting to appear as though Universal, very much so, was paying for, like, the modern payola was really boosting a boatload of popularity for Kendrick in the midst of this whole situation. Even though, like, the idea is that they haven't said anything publicly, but there are attorneys who are digging through the paperwork, and they're like, yeah, this is actually pretty bad. And I think the thing that kind of strikes me with all that, and again tying it back to some of the things we've talked about recently, is, man, even if just like the whole idea of like big news narrative control, like this stuff that gets blasted out to all the outlets, whether it's legacy media, whether it's new media, just all of that, the idea of any news regarding a particular artist, a particular band, just someone within, the music scene or any scene, but we're talking music specifically, for there to be a narrative that is being largely designed and driven by a label instead of by like me as a person. And just, I don't know, I just want to get your guys kind of off the cuff reaction. Like for Kendrick, I was listening to someone else talk about this recently, and for Kendrick to have like the label group around him, help, kind of turn this into a bigger thing, and for this to, kind of be essentially a manufactured controversy, just to get everybody more listens and to get, just like, hey, you're in the news cycle, you're showing up. The thing that is interesting about that is, like, now, like, I just heard somebody asking themselves, like, do you think Kendrick is going to regret this? Like at this point, and Drake is, like, sizably, he is a larger artist than Kendrick. Like, he has been for a long time, and his numbers continue to just slam. Kendrick is now probably going to be tied to Drake for the next however many years. Like, this is now going to be a massive talking point anytime that there's any music, anytime that there's any tour, anytime that there's anything. Kendrick's now tied to this Drake beef for a long time, and I don't know, man. I just sat back and was like, for someone, and because he's a talented dude, like Kendrick is really crafty with his just the way that he poetically goes after word choice and phrasing, whether it's him producing or his team around him. Like he's not producing garbage music. Like, he knows what he's doing, and I'm not a huge like listener of his, but like from the stuff that I have listened to, like, dude's solid. And so for all of that to then essentially be like dice rolled away on something like that, or just gambled in a way that you work all this, all these years, you've got a Pulitzer Prize, all this stuff, and then your label thinks that it's this really cute idea to like manufacture some controversy between you and this other guy, and now all of a sudden, like, did that just turn the narrative direction that dude literally won a Pulitzer Prize for his work? Like, now I'm in a fight with another artist, sort of thing. And it just, I don't know, I see all of that, and there's just a party. I don't feel bad for these guys who are on major labels and all that stuff, but there is a part of me that just sits back and says, like, do you think that Kendrick wishes that he was able to continue to navigate the ship of the story that is his artistry? Do you think that this is something he's going to regret tomorrow? Is this something he's going to regret in 5 years? Is this something that he'll never recover from? Is this something that, had he not gone to the majors, if he would have continued to work independently, that this just would have never been a thing? And so, yeah, it kind of could go a lot of different ways, but I figured I'd just kind of plant that in the middle, between all y'all, and just whatever happens to come out of you. I am curious what you think about all the major label manufactured controversy, fabricating storylines, telling you what kind of direction your artistic narrative is supposed to go. Yeah, just it's kind of an interesting concept.
So this is like verified, just like quick recap for me. This is like a verified thing that it was manufactured, because
It is verified that the people who are reading all the paperwork within the lawsuit, who aren't the ones making public statements, because that is, that like of course the labels aren't going to come out and say that they did it, but the attorneys, like, the evidence is clear at this point that the Universal they do not have their hands clean on this. Yep.
But you would say,
so again, do your research. Yeah. What's up? Sorry.
Well, I was just thinking the difference between manufactured and amplified. You know what I mean? To where it's like you put this disagreement on a world stage, and then everybody's like, "Oh, well," and people are responding. We're getting clicks, so let's keep it rolling, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, I'm curious because it's
go ahead.
It's it's not the first beef that's happened in the world of hip hop specifically, right? And I love Kendrick. I'm a huge Kendrick fan.
Yeah,
Kendrick, to me, like, I feel like the best way to describe it is like Drake is kind of like more of a I would probably akin him to more of a pop artist, where to me Kendrick is like, he's more of like call it a rapper's rapper. Like, he gets respect for what he does from like the artist community.
Yeah.
So I kind of have followed it just pretty closely, just with listening to Kendrick a lot and that sort of thing. But and so I know it just runs kind of far back with the original. Like, the two of them, they collaborated on something together, they were like on each other's stuff many years ago.
Yeah.
And then, these small things sort of happen along the way. And however it gets to where it is now, I haven't seen or read anything about this as of yet. So I'll have to check. But that's why I would tend to agree with maybe what Kirk is getting at, is like, there's something going on. So like, how can we make it more of a skeptical almost,
Sure.
Skeptical? Spectacle. How can we make it more of a spectacle?
Spectacle.
A skeptical spectacle.
That's good.
Do you know what I'm saying though? Like,
yeah, I do. Yeah.
I don't know. That would just be my initial thought, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and so you're saying that it appears to you that it might be more of and going off of what Kirk was saying too, like a reactive amplifying of what's going down instead of a proactive designing of it and then watching it play out. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to turn this into like a gossip thing by any means. It just is fascinating to watch storylines play out on like the grandest scale in the music industry. And like the Super Bowl, I mean, like, to be on that stage and directly, I mean, that's where that's where I could get on the train of like, okay, maybe there was some like encouragement, if you will, from whoever at the label, or to be like, hey, don't be shy, or like, let's stir the pot kind of thing. Because like Kirk said, whatever gets, and I mean, that halftime performance, right, is, I mean, God, like, can you guys think of a more memorable recent, like, just as far as going down in history of the what has come out of that? Not just the Drake thing, right? But I mean, everything. Yeah. And I mean, it's incredible to me to just all of the things that were just taken from just what could come across as such a simple performance. Sure.
And you have these things in there of what's going on with Drake and the memes that came out of it. But
so totally, I'm hearing all that. And Ben, I want to hear what you have to say. And Kirk, I want to hear yours too. Like, to tie it back a little bit more to kind of a 50,000 foot view, I'm curious about. Like, let's just say let's do like a benefit of the doubt thing here and say that. In fact, like, the attorneys who are digging through all the documentation, that they are wrong. They have kind of looked at it the wrong way, and that this really was more of a reactive amplification of what it was already happening, as opposed to a premeditated choice. Let's say it's on the reactive side. Like, at some point, and every contract is going to be different, I totally get that, but at some point, and I know this to be true with a handful of not Drake and Kendrick Lamar level artists, but a handful of other artists where there is an expectation as to what needs to come next, essentially, like musically, like what needs to be released next. Hey, this particular song or this particular sound that you did is exactly exactly what, like it blew up, and that's great. So now we want you to do more of that, please, instead of exploring, you know, your artistry in whatever way that you would want to. You're essentially now on the hook for, you know, for what they're asking you to do. And that is the trade for, you know, the size of the contract that you've signed and all that. But like 50,000 foot view, the idea of surrendering that much control in a sense, like I wonder how many people are even pursuing that anymore. I guess I wonder, like, I don't know. I'd have to go, you know, take a look at the metrics a little bit, and what artists who are popping up, you know, like up in the top 100 on streaming and stuff, how many of them are doing it organically? How many of them are doing it, you know, not signed to, and I know some of them have like major label distro deals, which I personally think is different than, you know, like a major label deal. I guess the thing that just takes me aback is the idea that even like the biggest of the big in the music industry can't seem to escape the fact that their labels are continuing to twist and turn the path and try to make something out of this that might not necessarily be there, or to try to make something out of nothing. Yeah, just, it is fascinating to me. And to be honest, like as artists, it makes me kind of sad for them. Like sad for if something's being manufactured, it makes me kind of bummed out for Kendrick, or kind of bummed out for
Totally
Drake. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not au fait with like all the ins and outs of this. Like I probably the least of all of us like know exactly what has been going on, but it kind of, for me, it speaks to the value of attention and how far one is willing to go to get attention, for which will then kind of halo onto the main product being music, and how far away from that you are okay going. And, you know, you see it obviously with major labels, artists. You also see it with a whole load of independent artists who are creating, you know, basically the advice for many people is, hey, go on TikTok, create something viral, put your music in the background, and then more people find out about your music. And I get that this is different. This is involving multiple people and, you know, lawsuits and kind of more aggressive stuff. But ultimately, it is kind of the same thing, is that you're just trying to do something which isn't your music to drive attention to your music. And then for me, the question is, how value is it? And how, at what point, how, like the further you move away from your core product, from the music, at what point is there kind of essentially diminishing returns? And it's like, it's not worth going that far. Like I get with, you know, creating, you know, a super interesting kind of music lip sync kind of video, you know, in a really interesting place, which might go viral because of the place that you're in, but it's still very tied to your music. I think that's a great idea. But just doing some kind of viral, you know, basketball like throw, and it's like, wait, that's amazing, what an incredible thing, and then your music's on in the background. For me, that has nothing to do with the music. And so yes, that clip might go viral because it's super interesting to watch, but how many of those people are then going to kind of come back to your core thing? Now, I know people will disagree with me because I have seen pretty much that exact advice on multiple YouTube videos. But
man, no, I'm with you.
Oh, yeah.
I personally feel like, especially with ambient music, especially the kind of genres we're in, there has to be a link, a relatively close link with the music to the promotional activities that one is doing. Now, again, I don't want to speak too much into this very specific situation, but that's kind of what it reminds me of.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's, I mean, we've talked before about the idea of like what you win them with is what you win them to. Like, you know, if the idea is, and it's taking your thing a little further, but we've talked about it before, the idea of, you know, start doing like funny shorts or reels or TikTok or whatever, like you can generate traffic as a presence in social space or whatever. But if I did so on my Dear Gravity Music social page, like they're not instinctively looking for cinematic ambient music. They're looking for more of whatever dumb, goofy video that I posted on, you know, thing that went viral, and they just want more of that. So if that is the goal, it all comes back around to that. Like, what is the goal? Is the goal to just have numbers spike? And I think that can be part of this equation where it's like, well, you know, more attention means the more people are going to listen to the music and more this. And I get that to a degree, but I also don't think that it can be controlled as much as you think. Like if all of a sudden there was a video of Ben's that just spiked a couple million views. Just you being dorky with your kids or something like that, which is great. And so it could be super funny, could be super heartwarming, but it's not necessarily tied to your music. I don't know if the impact on Antarctic Wastelands or Memories of the Forgotten or Salt of the Sound, I don't think that you would see a seismic shift in the traffic or in the momentum there, even though you wound up seeing a seismic shift in, traffic on that. And so would the desire be that I just want to have something that says that I got millions of views on something, and you can kind of like manipulate that truth to make it sound like you're more popular than you actually are? Or is it just a hope that there's enough, advertising dollars that come in through that you can just kind of sustain a music career? It can go so many different ways. But like, what is the point of wanting more traffic if it means that you're like, if you're pursuing things outside of the narrative that you want to drive forward, if you have to deviate from that narrative in order to get the traffic, are you deviating potentially into something that you might never get back on the same lane with?
Well, you're bringing in the wrong people as well, right?
Yeah,
like you are, if people see a viral video of me with my kids, for example, and that gets 1 million views and a whole bunch of people following.
I mean, come on.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean there's value to that, I'm sure. But then there's a whole bunch of people who will find that video who want to see viral videos of dads with their kids.
Yeah.
And they will join my page. And then suddenly, if I want to grow that page, I have to provide more of that content.
Yeah.
And then the music becomes the side thing on that particular social channel. And so you're doing two things and you're getting the wrong people if your goal is to promote your music or at least create a story around the music that you are creating.
Yeah.
Well, so then when it's on the scope of, if you go back to Kendrick and Drake, when it's on that level, I guess I'm curious your guys' thoughts on, like, I don't know if there's controversy being generated in any way. Clearly the audience for both artists is massive without that.
Sure.
So what is the purpose of generating that? Is it to bring attention to the music? It's hard for me to like agree that would be the reason.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and I mean, and maybe this is speaking out of turn, but was it Rockefeller who somebody asked like, how much is enough? And his answer was,
exactly.
Just a little bit more. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's even if you're Drake, if you're pulling in Drake numbers, like Drake might not be happy with Drake numbers. Universal might not be happy.
Right.
It could get so nerdy real fast, but it's like, if your budget isn't balancing at the label, like what is the easiest way to kind of bridge that gap is you probably get more out of like your top one or two artists than to try to get more out of like, 50 mid-tier artists and move the needle that way. And again, like we're just talking dollars. We're just talking revenue as opposed to, like moving their artistry, further along the spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much is enough? Yeah. Little devil's advocate there. I don't mean to like push back on you constantly on that.
No,
you don't
it
know.
never is though. I mean, that's
right.
very fair.
Right.
Like it's always more, like, let's get more. I mean,
yeah,
I completely agree. And if that's the only motivation, fine. I think I'm just curious, like the mindset of like, well, okay, Kendrick's going to play the Super Bowl. We can, capitalize on this controversy. And then ultimately more people listen to his music. Maybe.
Yeah.
There were a lot of spikes that they talked about for all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But so for me, like specifically with the hip hop, it's like beef has been a part of the culture from the beginning, when people were like having like b-boy battles and MC battles, and like the battle was like part of the thing, and then beef was always part of the thing. And there's plenty of times where artists manufactured beef with each other for the sake of the story, and it sold records, and they were buddies, but they, manufactured the beef to make the thing, and then sometimes there was real beef that was real and also sold records, but also got hyped. I mean, I saw you have a Biggie poster on your wall, so it's like that, the whole West Coast, East Coast stuff. I mean, some of that was real, some of it was manufactured. So lines were blurred, and then, it's this kind of system of beef that can then get overdone. Like, it's just like, it can go past and go too far.
It can get overcooked.
It can be tragic,
You're welcome.
What'd you say?
I said it can get overcooked.
Oh, man, well done.
The beef.
Well done.
Or well done. Keep going.
I've got this running page of like when we all just say random stuff and what would just be like amazing like moniker and album names and System of Beef I think is probably
System of Beef.
I
love it.
I mean, we're poking a whole lot of fun at you probably making one of the most poignant comments of this whole conversation so far. So please forgive us for being just absolutely jerks right now.
That's one thing. So in the sense of like, we'll never know the full backstory, I'm sure, but I'm sure there's a point to where it's like, man, we have a chance. Like there's like a beef going on. It's like, oh, beef. That's like, let's do this. And then they're like, oh, wait, we could make this massive. And so there's a part of it to where I think not all rappers, but lots of rappers would love the idea of trying to do a beef on a world stage and like have, the BBC print an article on the beef, like instead of it's just in like a hip hop magazine, or whatever. So, or like on a talk show, it's like, the Washington Post is commenting on beef. It's like, where are we in the world? So I think part of that is like, oh man, this is kind of cool. Let's see how far we can take this. And, it is what it is. And maybe that's part of the art, part of the speaking on the culture, part of the stuff. But I also think it's like, it's not necessarily the highest and best use of artistry.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I can see where it's like there's a gamification to it, to where the whole thing at the end of his Super Bowl thing said game over, at the very end of the show. So it's kind of like him saying it's kind of all a game, even if a lot of the stuff is real or not real or fabricated or whatever. But it's like there's artists who will take shots at other artists just to try to get their attention so that then they will shoot back, which then gives them the attention. So it's like I had this thing in my mind where it's like, what would be a hypothetical situation? It's like it's if we did like a deep dive to dig up all this dirt on like Brian Eno and how he was such a jerk in the studio and he worked with all these people, and we start like airing out dirty laundry of him doing sessions with these guys and just being a jerk to Coldplay or being a jerk to whatever. And we just start talking about it on the podcast and airing it out, and we put it out. And then all of a sudden, like everybody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's, whatever. He's like that. And it gets to the point where
ambient track.
Yeah, right. What? With like the titles, Eno. And then all of a sudden what has to happen is that he has to come on the podcast to basically clear the air, to clear his name. And then that goes viral and that gets picked up by Apple Music, and then Zayn's like doing the thing. Like it's like that's how you would use viral beef negative content to then bring it back to the music. Ugh. And so it's like it's definitely it's a thing people do.
Yeah. What a colossal waste of time.
Well, it's clickbait. It's headlines. We like to look at the car accident. We like to rubberneck. Headlines that are shocking are more clicked, So it's like if we did a podcast where we just talked about all the great things that we liked about Brian Eno and all of our favorite tracks and all this kind of stuff, like that's not going to go as far, It's just the nature of our intrigue to do that. So whether
maybe
it's bad or not,
yeah. What was that, Ben?
Maybe we're doing this whole thing wrong. Maybe we just need to
say exactly
negative content. Like that's the win, right?
I think
generate
the cover art for this episode should be a Chat GPT generated image of like in the studio in front of a big like 48 channel Neve console, Brian Eno just like kicking the pants of Chris Martin, just like right up the like just like assaulting him. I feel like that really would tie in kind of everything that we're going for. Makes a lot of sense to me.
Or Brian though, God.
But we got to put Drake and Kendrick in the studio somehow. As young kids.
Yeah. Yep.
This is where they learned that beef sells.
I love that conversation, by the way. That's all very interesting to me, just the label involvement and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I think it just gives for anyone who might be and we've talked bits and pieces about this before, but just the idea of like Are you desiring momentum and traffic for your artistry for the sake of like furthering what you're doing creatively, or are you just like attempting to grab attention because you've got like some sort of internal struggle and you just need people to tell you that you're important or that you're popular or that you matter or whatever, or are you just that you're trying to keep up with some particular metric that really just doesn't, it can be hard to outgrow that. If you start the moment you sign up for that, there's really no end to that, I think, and it's something that I think we all need to keep in check. I think it can kind of sneak in there if you're not careful, but at the end, like what are the goalposts for our artistry? And we've talked a lot about that. We don't have to crack that open. That's a whole nother episode. We haven't beaten it to death, but we've certainly spoken into that topic a lot. It's a wild industry for sure. So there's a level of cohesion and of camaraderie amongst the All Ambient family that I just, chef's kiss indeed. It's something to be grateful for.
Yeah, we don't have to deep dive this because I do think it's a nice segue, but I think there's like a level there of that I know we all struggle with when it comes to like creating content specifically, that just what comes across as genuine and what doesn't, you know?
Sure.
And when I know for me, if I'm sharing something online, there's always the fear of like, well, did I do this well, or will this resonate, or those sort of things. I also know that when I watch content that I like, it's very easy for me to feel like, okay, this is something that feels kind of gimmicky and I'm just going to keep going because it just feels, you don't like watching something for when it feels like someone wants to just bring traffic, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think as artists, there's a balance of things we have talked about, which is, yes, people do want to see you in your element and doing the things that you love to do. And how can you share that in a way that is engaging on one hand, but also is not, please come and click my page kind of thing. And if that's the goal, then that's okay, right? Like, yeah, we would all love for there to be traffic to our pages, but I think you guys know what I mean. There's just a way of like, people want to see you and the real you and the genuine things that you do. And you can do that without, doing all the clickbaity things. Yeah. So there's just a balance there, I think.
Yeah. And for me, I think it links to what you're saying, Marshall, in that there is a power to storytelling and creating content, if you like, which does tell a story, and people are interested in that. I know this was very kind of negative, but even in a positive sense, if you're telling stories about your music, if you're bringing people on a journey, that kind of stuff is what people enjoy watching over and above just, hey, here's my music, go check it out kind of thing. So there is that kind of middle ground where you are linking what you're creating, your stories, your videos, to your music in a very intrinsic way and in a very beautiful way that amplifies the message of your music. And I think it's a hard balance to find, but I think the artists who do find that can see some real growth in their music and growth in interest in them as artists and kind of growth in fanship of their music, because they're kind of peeling back the curtain a little bit and, just sharing a little bit more about what's going on. So yeah, I know, I think I've probably said this on previous episodes, but that's something that I'm really interested in to kind of dig into more. And yeah, I think it's an exciting, especially with the power of video and the accessibility to video content now for everyone. Like, I think it's the direction that people should be going, at least in some senses, in like some direction.
Man, absolutely. We've covered a lot of turf. My goodness. Wow. All right. Well, time to put this system of beef to rest, I guess.
Yes.
There's no better way to end it. We're just calling it right there. Thanks again for joining us on the All Ambient podcast. This is about as shameless of a plug as it gets, but it really does help for those of you who are watching to give us a rating if you're on any podcast platform like Apple or Spotify or anything like that. On YouTube, we would love a follow, a subscribe, a like, all that fun stuff. And please leave a comment, a review, whatever is applicable to the right place that you're finding this. It really does go a long way. You don't have to make anything up by any means, but if there's some value in this podcast for you, we'd love to hear about it. We, as the All Ambient family, would love to meet you. I know it does my heart good, as well as everybody else who's involved at All Ambient. So please do so. Come back and join us next week. We got another great episode coming your way. And until then, here's hoping that this music and the hearts behind it make your day and your life that much better. Thanks.